Hey everyone, this is Jay with you from my channel Liformation. I'm recording this in my residence, and yeah, just a few hours more to the end of this year 2018, and I was just sitting on my bedside thinking, what do I speak to my subscribers about today? And it just struck me that I must speak to you on a very important topic as we're dawning into the new year. So the topic that I'm going to share with you today is the fear of rejection. Yeah, you can hear some firecrackers in the background. That's how it is where I live. They usually celebrate it just before as well, and there'll be a charade of firecrackers, just lighting up on 31st, just before it turns on first. Yeah, so that's at midnight. Yeah, so let's just see, what is the fear of rejection. Okay, so the fear of rejection is a condition where you seek the happiness of others excessively, to the point that if they deny you or any of your actions, you will focus on that specifically and excessively, to the point that it will depress you, right? So basically your motivation is centered around somebody else's approval, and that somebody is somebody whom you regard as pretty high in your life, right? It can be a celebrity, it can be somebody whom you hold with a high regard, it can be anybody, but their affirmation means so much to you, right? So this condition is usually in victims trying to gain the appeal of the people around the victims' lives, so much so that it matters a lot to them, right? So this problem, I mean, it exists rampantly in society today, but the problem is also it's to do with early childhood upbringing and the neglect that the child would have undergone during the time of development. So there are people who are able to identify fear of rejection. I mean, not as a phobia, but some people are able to just read people's emotions, and some go to the extent of exploiting these victims and to gain an advantage over their lives, and they tend to play on their emotions. Yeah, so this becomes very dangerous, especially when you are a victim to this phobia, because as with all phobias, they're very addictive. Yeah, so now I find that this is more of a problem to both genders on an equal scale, but this tend to affect more women than it does men, because men are pretty good at hiding their emotions. But on the other hand, when it comes to decision making, some women actually tend to base their opinions and decisions based on emotions, and that is especially dangerous when this fear of rejection is involved, right? So that is one of the main aspects to this. Also, people who are rejection phobic also have a hard time to say no to someone, right? So they believe that if they say no, the person will not speak to them anymore, and this fear then plays on their conscience, so much so that they feel guilty more often than not. So now these so-called observations are mostly within the individuals, and they may not be evident to others, as is the case with with they manage it, but some, it's very evident. That's how it is, right? But some do not recognize that they have fear. So the fear of rejection can build a lot of stress on the mind and body of a victim, right? And we all know that the inability to manage excessive stress, not stress, excessive stress, is the leading cause of many of illnesses today. People are plagued by non-infectious diseases like diabetes, high cholesterol, you know, um, you name it. Like most of the non-contagious diseases or chronic diseases, body inflammation that happens. So these are all a result, or let's say a main trigger in the body is not being able to adequately manage high levels of stress, right? And if you delve into a little bit of science or modern science, which says that stress is the responsibility for stress is due to a hormone called cortisol, right? It's produced by the adrenal glands, these little small fatty cells that you get sitting on top of your kidneys, on both sides. So they produce cortisol, which is the hormone that will trigger as a response to stress. Now, stress can be a result of, mental stress as a result of multiple phobias, not only a fear of rejection, but since I'm speaking to you specifically on the fear of rejection, this is a main contributor to stress as well. Now, stress, or let's say cortisol, also is known to reduce your immunity to infectious diseases. So like infectious diseases are like your body being invaded by alien organisms, or when I mean alien, I don't mean like UFOs floating down and like invading you. No, these are pathogenic organisms like viruses, bacteria that will invade you, and they will cause illnesses or diseases inside of you, because stress will weaken your immune system. So it's very important that we understand this problem, and we as humans acknowledge it and try to our best to know what to do about it. Also, I find that in poor countries, the fear of rejection is more rampant than in most developed countries, but that doesn't mean that it does not exist in developed countries. It does. But when I see the trend in developing countries, right, I see that during the early phases of children who are growing up, you find that parents or young adults who are, parenting, are faced with financial difficulties, where when they are in parenthood, they are forced to sometimes put their child into daycare, or both parents are working during daytime and they spend very little time with the child. And that, I believe, is a very crucial point when a child is growing up, because the child is always looking for affirmation from the two most important individuals in that child's life, and that is the mother and the father. So, when a child comes, scribbles something on the wall, or you give him or her a piece, a small piece of paper, he or she folds it into something and brings it and shows it to you, what they're actually looking for is your affirmation. That they will do the best they can, and they will present it to you saying, "Mom, Dad," or they will just come and say that do you like me because of what I did? Do I make you proud? That's at the top of their expression. But what happens most often is when they have no outlet for that, when they look for the person whom they really want and that person is not found, there is no expression. And when there is no expression, um, that side or that aspect of the mind gets stunted, right? And when that happens, they try to be pleasing to different people at different stages. That's what happens most often than not, because you find that they go to school and they try to please their friends. They go to please their parents, or not parents. They go to please their friends or their teachers, or they go to please their coach. What they did not receive at that early age, you tend to carry throughout your life, and it carries on with you even during teenage years. It goes with you into your relationships. It goes into your it goes even into the aspects of your relationships, right? So these phobias, as I mentioned, is not only in developing countries where parents sometimes go to a foreign country for employment purposes and they leave the child with a grandparent or under the custody of some caretaker. It's also evident in developed countries, as I mentioned earlier, where they put children to daycare and go. So I acknowledge that this happens actually at this age. And so as with all fears, the first step is to realize that one is a victim, right? And most often people do not realize it, and they end up thinking that it's a part of their personality, because the shift of their behavior has happened so gradually that they don't realize what's going on, and that how it is affecting them. So once you realize that that is present, and in the case of acknowledging that, one then needs to change. So how do you change? So you ask me, like, okay, so when you acknowledge it, as I mentioned, these steps are not necessarily easy, even acknowledgement, because sometimes you acknowledge it as a part of your own personality because you've gone through such a hard coding of this personality, and the fear is so hard coded into your mind that uprooting it is very, very painful. Believe me, it is painful, because you will try tooth and nail to justify why it should be there, and because this fear is in your comfort zone. If you're one of those people, right, I challenge you to uproot it, because it's not helping you in any way for that being there. It shouldn't be there in the first place, because one thing is, it is a void. It is a hole in your okay, I won't use the word soul, but I'll say that it exists inside of you. It's a void, and you're looking so much to fill this, right? And it was caused sometime early on, but you're looking now to fill it with different things, which is not happening, and people try to exploit you. So once you acknowledge that this is existent in you, and that you're exhibiting these things that I just mentioned that you have, so what's next? Well, once you acknowledge it, then you know that you must change, and you want to change. Just conjure up the most lovable person, and just think, what would happen if you walk up to that person and disagree with that person? What would happen? What would happen if the most lovable person in your life, right, did not agree with your viewpoint? What would happen? Well, if you're a victim, you would tend to then want to change to appease that person. Okay, this can exist in different levels of personality. So if you find yourself immediately conforming to, okay, you want to say no, but you see the person and the person is disagreeing with you, so you immediately fall back and say, okay, you find ways of agreeing with that person, right? When you have that, it means that you don't have a strong background of why you wanted to disagree with that person in the first place, right? So which means you had some kind of logic at which you wanted to say no, but then that logic was overrun by the play of emotions, which was triggered by the fear, right? So this is one of the reasons which I say, just examine yourself, look at your ideas of when you want to say something but you don't, you think twice before saying it. What are the reasons for doing those things? Is it that that you don't want to upset people too much? Or is it, okay, there's another trick here, right? Being diplomatic is sometimes not the same as fear of agreeing with somebody, right? Or when you don't want to. So being diplomatic is a skill that you employ to say what you want to say, but in a non-conflicting way, right? So much so that you exhibit ways of expressing it to the other person in an understandable way that that person may agree with you. So it's more towards trying to convey your point of view to that person in a negotiable way that that person can see your point of view, right? But when it comes to the fear of phobia, you find you start off with saying no, but then you end up saying yes because of the influence that that has on you, right? Now this fear, okay, as with all fears, it is in your mind, right? It is not true. Okay, let me put it in a different way. If you take fear, right, it has 4 letters, FEAR, right? So I'd like to use the acronym for fear as false evidence appearing real. It's not real. But what happens most often than not is that you will tend to look at it as real because it is so much been a part of you, right? So that is the main reason. Now, if you have, so there's another action that I want you to do if you want to change, right? There are so many activities that you can actually do, and I recommend you that if you know that you have such an issue, one thing is it takes a lot of self-reflection to understand that you have an issue, and then come out and acknowledge it, and of course look up ways to overcome it, right? I can give you one such tip on Liformation, and that is, all right, this might help. Think of an enemy of yours, somebody you really dislike, right? Think of them and just understand why you dislike them. What is it that turns you so off, right? Just evaluate the reasons as to why you dislike that person, right? And then just go ask a friend of yours who is also a friend of the enemy that you have just thought up of. Now just ask that person, what do you like about that person? And just evaluate their responses as well, right? Now just analyze it and just see within you that why you've not thought up of those good things about that person. And the next step about it is you should take an action as to, all right, now that you have identified good things about the person, you already know the negatives. Now, the good things about your enemy, you should confront. Go and take a stance and just speak good about that person. There's a lot of things that can happen. You may look like a fool, you may look like an idiot, you may look like you're a lunatic, a psycho. People may laugh at you, but that takes guts, man. I'm telling you, that takes a lot to go walk up to an enemy and just tell good about that person. Just apologize, and tell what's in your heart. I've been thinking this and this about you, but I know that's not the case, because I know that it was my perception, and perception is not real. I now understand that, and that's why I'm coming out to you and apologizing for the things that I've harbored in my mind about you. Go and say it to that person. That person will appreciate you for it, for sure. That person might not have known. Sometimes you act in different ways, and the reasons for it are inside your head and not necessarily visible to somebody else. So just try it out. These things actually help you to loosen your grip on phobias. Because a fear is a non-existent thing in your mind, and it is big. If it's physical, you can overcome it, but if it's mental, you need to tackle it in a different way. And it's like slaying a giant when you don't see the giant, right? It's difficult. It takes a lot to actually tackle a mental issue, right? So that's where this series of episodes from Liformation comes in to help you, and I want to talk about it openly, so as to make you guys aware about these issues. Just a disclaimer that I'm not a psychologist, or I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing my observations on life, right? And I know that some of you might find these videos utter stupid, or you might leave negative comments, but hey, I'm just expressing my observations on life. So if you guys want to take away something from these videos, you're most welcome to, and I humbly put it out there on YouTube for everyone to benefit from it. So I encourage all of you guys to, whoever is watching this channel, to go ahead and just like my videos, and also subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, so that you'll be notified on any new videos that I come out with. So I hope that this topic has been a blessing and an eye-opener to you, and also and it has impacted your life in a positive way. So I wish you all the best for the upcoming new year 2019. All right, and take care until next time. This is Jay signing out for Liformation.